What up, y'all? DCFAYGOGUY. Today we are gonna be reviewing the brand new Twiztid album, Welcome to Your Funeral. I gotta say, guys, I wasn't really sure what to expect going into this album. If you have not watched my review for Unlikely Prescription, just to kind of summarize, when I first listened to that album, it took several listens. It took years of trying and just being in the right mode, and it finally clicked for me. It's not even been a year yet that I've been a fan of that album. So when it came to Welcome to Your Funeral, I knew immediately I was going to go into this 100% open-minded with that fact that it took a while for Unlikely Prescription to click for me. So I knew if I went into it and I didn't like it, I wasn't going to just write it off as an album that I don't like. Another thing I did going into this album, I did not listen to any of the singles. There was something about the artwork for this album specifically that made me feel like there was some kind of a theme to this album that maybe I needed to wait and not listen to any of the singles. And honestly, I've just been somebody who I don't want to listen to singles and then go listen to the album and then have those singles be something that I then skip. I've had that happen in the past where, for instance, Tech Nine would drop singles for his album and I would just listen to them because they were out. And then the album drops and those are the songs that tend to be like, I've already heard this so many times, and skip. So it's kind of a new way I've been approaching albums, is just not listening to the singles. And that's what I did with Welcome to Your Funeral. I didn't listen to any of it. I was like, I'm not going to listen to it out of kind of context. I want to listen to it all together. And then when the artwork was revealed, that more so really kind of confirmed for me that I'm glad I've been waiting, because it feels like there's a theme to this album. And 1000%, there's definitely a theme to this album. And quite honestly, going into this, I felt kind of like maybe there's something missing as far as like an intro or a skit or something to really kind of tell a story with this album. This album felt like, it really kind of felt like it had a vibe of, in the same way that The Darkness did, where there was an overall theme to it. And without skits, I don't really think that that conveyed a message. But the more that I've listened to this album and the more that I've watched or listened while reading the lyrics, it's something I've never really done before. Really kind of opened it up more so for me. And I'm like, oh, okay, this feels like the theme of the album. So for me, how I'm interpreting it, and it could be wrong, and I'm still kind of early in development. The album dropped a fucking week ago, but I've been listening to it daily. That's how much I've fallen in love with this album. I haven't even got to that point. But I've been starting to listen to it with the lyrics, and the theme for me has been Welcome to Your Funeral. This is kind of like going into your own head, going into your own self, and like feeling like death. You're being welcomed to your own funeral, where you're just kind of going into that dead space and in a lot of ways just kind of processing feelings and thoughts and things like that. That being said, and I've seen a lot of people kind of make this statement that this album has a lot of like the world hates me kind of lyrics in it. And it definitely does, but I think that that's also kind of the point. So this album, like I said, absolutely, I was blown away by it. I went into it with the open-mindedness of, I don't know if I'm going to like this on the first listen, so if I don't write it off, keep listening to it. And by track 2, I was fucking hooked. I've made this statement already somewhere. This album is very quickly skyrocketing into one of my favorite Twiztid albums because of the overall theme of like mental health, because of like, it's one of those albums that you kind of get in your head, or when you get in your head, this is something you're going to listen to. And this is where we're going to start talking about comparisons. I don't always listen to Korn, but when I'm feeling very down on myself, feeling very angry at the world, that's my perfect time to listen to Korn. I've been very, very careful when talking about this album to not say that this sounds like Korn, but to say that this has Korn vibes. Everyone everywhere is making that same comparison. This sounds like some Korn shit. And I've been trying to be very careful not to say it like that. And the reason I say that is because, yes, there are elements to the music that sound like Korn, but I don't remember Jonathan Davis sounding like Jamie Madrox. I don't remember Jonathan Davis sounding like Monoxide. So while there are elements to the music that definitely have the same vibe, and mainly the biggest thing with it is the bass guitar is like tuned to a very similar tune that they use in a lot of Korn's music. There are some other elements in there too, a kind of, guitar strums that sound very similar to some Korn music. But when I see people saying that, oh, this sounds like some Korn shit, I looked at it and I'm like, I mean, I get what they're saying, but this isn't Korn. Like, Jonathan Davis doesn't sing like this. Jonathan Davis doesn't rap like this. So they definitely went into a vibe that sounds like Korn, and really a lot of the tracks, it's just some of the vibes I got immediately. Fear Factory. I've seen people say Static X, but I've not listened to a lot of Static X, so I'm just going to include that on here because I've seen other people say it. It definitely at times gave me vibes of Alice in Chains. Like, my favorite fucking track literally kind of sounds and feels like a fucking doesn't sound like, it feels like an Alice in Chains vibed track. Definitely a little bit of Collective Soul. They've got a couple of punk songs in there, and that's what they feel like to me, is they feel very vibey to Collective Soul. Collective Soul at times can go soft rock, but they also have a lot of heavy riff guitars in some of their music. So they this to me was kind of like them going in and like, all right, we're going to try these different styles, and that's what we ended up with. So I think that they did a very good job. I think Zeus did a very good job with the music. I think they did a very good job as far as fitting how they wanted to make the music over these tracks. I don't know how much of it was done actually with Zeus, or did he make the music and then it was sent to them and then they wrote to it? That I don't know. I know there's been interviews where they've talked about working with Zeus, so I'm kind of assuming some of it was in studio. And one big thing I really want to point out on this too, they also have said in interviews that Zeus told them that they're rappers and they should be rapping. And we definitely got a little bit more of that on this. And honestly, kind of going back to Unlikely Prescription, I do feel like there was a couple of tracks on that album where they did do some rapping. But it definitely was kind of more, they were going for like a punk alternative rock type of sound. They definitely channel a little bit more. They went more metal with this album. It has a very new metal type of feel to it. Early 2000s, late 1990s, and actually, as I was listening to this, Megs has overheard it, and like this, she said the same thing. This sounds like early 2000s stuff. So, to me, I think they did a really good job coming through that way. And honestly, I feel for me a lot of influence in this. Again, people have said Static X. They obviously went on tour with Static X a couple years ago, but also on that tour with them with Static X was Fear Factory, and there's a lot of Fear Factory vibes I'm hearing in this music. Like, literally, as soon as we got to I Don't Need This, the second track, it started off and you get to that, the double pedal bass, the drums, that to me is a signature sound of Fear Factory that I love. And when I heard that on I Don't Need This, I instantly was like, perked up. It itched my brain. I'm like, oh, I love this. That song very quickly was a top 5 track. So they experimented, I think, and they went with different sounds, but also in a lot of the music, it feels very woven together, unlike Unlikely Prescription. You get kind of to the middle of the album and it starts to get a little bit more punky at times, but then it kind of brings it back and the album just ends to me very well. There are different ways that this album has been released. I don't have a physical copy. I'm still trying to decide which route I want to go as far as getting this goes. Obviously, they released a special edition on their Be My Bloody Valentine shows. There was a CD, a cassette, and there was a way to go purchase vinyl of it. All of the ones from the Be My Bloody Valentine shows have all 12 tracks. There's different ways that, again, there's different ways that this album was released. If you go listen to it on streaming, you get 11 tracks. You get a bonus track called Thunder from the Sky. If you go buy the CD from M&E, it's just a standard 10 tracks. And this is, again, something where it felt like maybe they were inspired by Fear Factory. Maybe I'm wrong with this. I don't know. In the past, they've done different versions of albums, but it really kind of felt a certain significance to me, especially when trying to figure out which version of the album I would want to buy when the time comes that I'm going to buy the CD if I do. And I think I would want to get the absolute standard edition. It's nothing against the bonus tracks at all, but I feel like the album really feels like it ends on Dance on My Grave. So FYD, I have heard it. It's very punky, feels like early Metallica stuff a little bit. Like there's Metallica vibes there. See there, I'm trying to be careful not to say it sounds like. It's got some early Metallica vibes to it. Very punky, very like, early metal music kind of sounds to it. And to me, as a bonus track, I didn't listen to Dance on My Grave and then go to FYD, but the CD that they have does do that. And I know in an instant, I would not vibe with that. The vibe of Dance on My Grave going to FYD is so drastic. And honestly, it happens in the album that way as well. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go in. It just felt like it didn't fit, and I can see why it was a bonus track. And honestly, part of me wonders if FYD was one of the first tracks they recorded for this album, because it feels like FYD feels like it would fit better on Unlikely Prescription. That's just kind of where I'm at. But again, one of the things that I feel like that they kind of maybe drew some inspiration for, or one of the comparisons that I made, is Fear Factory is someone who does this a lot as well. They'll release like a standard edition of the album, and I'm going to pull these out here. They've done it with a lot of their releases. This is the one where I actually own like multiple versions of it. And that is like Digimortal here. You get into the standard edition. It's only 10 tracks, which is something that you really get common in Fear Factory albums. I think it's only 10 tracks, right? Oh, it's 11 tracks. 11 tracks, excuse me. I misremembered that just because of this point here. But from 2010 on, from Mechanized to Genexus to The Industrialist to Aggression Continuum, most of those albums, I think all of those albums, minus The Industrialist, they're 10 tracks long. A lot of times you can get a version of the album that has bonus tracks, much like the Digipack version of Digimortal comes with the standard 10, and then you get 4 additional tracks, which is the reason I bought this, because I really like the bonus tracks on there. But honestly, the same way with this album, when I get to Memory Imprints, that's where I'm kind of like, this feels like the end of the album. So the bonus tracks are there. They're nice. They're cool to listen. But to listen to the album as the album, I have found myself getting to the end of it and just wanting to like, okay, this feels like the album. And that's how it has been with Welcome to Your Funeral. I feel like you get to Dance on My Grave, and it feels like the appropriate end to the album. Thunder from the Sky connects very well to the overall themes of the album. So I've enjoyed it. And honestly, it's another one of those tracks where it has the drumming in it that reminds me and makes me feel like some Fear Factory vibes, that I love it a lot. And that's kind of why, like, I'm torn on what I would want to get. I don't think I would want to listen to the album with FYD in there. I just do not think it fits very well, especially at the end of the album. It fits the best in the middle, because that's where we get more of the punky sounding tracks. And FYD, again, really just feels very punky to me. So I am not going to play any of the music here for you guys. I want you guys to go listen to this album. I don't want to give any snippets of it. And the reason for that is I don't think that I can play enough of it to really give you the vibe of the song. I think if you're super curious about the album, you're just going to have to go into it as open-minded as you can. And something that I will say here and now, if you're not a fan of metal, this is not the album for you. I see a lot of people that say that they don't like Twiztid's rock stuff. And to me, I finally clicked with it, and why I think that is. And I think it's just because a lot of juggalos, I should say, maybe aren't metal fans. If it's not your type of music that you like, it's not something that's going to click for you, and this is not an album for you to check out. Unlikely Prescription is not an album for you to check out. A lot of these same people that I think don't like metal music didn't care for Zug Island, and that's why 333 didn't do as well. I mean, Cracked Tiles was very rap rock, and it had a lot of influence from Violent J, and I think that's why juggalos love that album so much. But after Cracked Tiles, Zug Island really kind of fell off, and I think it's because juggalos just weren't receptive to that sound. Same way with Motown Rage. They came in very nu metal sounding, and it just did not do well with the juggalos. And I think that this is really the case with a lot with what Twiztid is trying to do. And that's why I'm going to continue the statement that I had said in my Unlikely Prescription review. I do think that they should have done rock music under a different moniker. I understand the reasoning of they've already got so many followers on Spotify. They've already got a big following. And to kind of hit reset on that would be very difficult. But you also have a lot of those followers that are listening to this music and they're like, this ain't it. So I don't think that would really so much be an issue. I think it would be a lot easier to try to market that music to fans if it wasn't under the Twiztid moniker, just because Like, a lot of people, when they see Twiztid and they see that they have an album, they're probably going into it thinking it's going to be wicked shit or it's going to be, you know, rap. They've always had metal. They've always had some rock tracks in it, some rock influences. I just wholeheartedly, firmly believe that doing rock music under a different name would have really helped them out a lot. And I'm going to continue I'm going to die on that hill. So I want to jump into this and I want to talk about my favorite tracks. And it's hard because I really like this album front to back. I knew immediately, like 3 or 4 of them immediately knew those were going to be in my top 5. And then it really got difficult from there. So I'm going to jump into my top 5 tracks and then I'm going to give you guys my favorite. So top 5 is I Don't Need This, The Wake, Let Me Go, Plastic, and Dance on My Grave. And again, it was hard to really kind of pick that 5th one. I Don't Need This immediately was a top track. As soon as that song started and I started hearing those drums, I was like, oh, it's fucking on. And I believe when my very first listen, I went into the Deck One Doubt Discord server. They have a channel specifically for like metal, like to talk about metal music. I went in there, I was like, Twiztid went fucking metal on this. Nobody really responded to it, and it really kind of fell on deaf ears or deaf eyes. But I was like, that was just for anyone who saw that message, who's in that Discord server and saw that was my immediate reaction. I was reacting immediately to what I was listening to on Welcome to Your Funeral. Immediately was like, I fucking love this track. So it definitely was a top 5 right away. Let Me Go for me is more of, it was the hook that got stuck in my head that made me really feel like I love this. I love that hook a lot. It's earwormed its way into my head, and I just really enjoy it quite a bit. Dance on My Grave was definitely a top 5. I like the way that this ends. I like the way that it kind of has a good ballad to it and closes out the album. I think it does very well with that. The Wake is a top 5 track. And this song here was immediately like, I'm feeling Alice in Chains vibes from this. Just in the way that the song was done, the way that it sounds, the way that they did some reverb on their vocals. I really fell in love with that. Love the chorus. The chorus is what really felt the most like some Alice in Chains vibes. That's where I was really feeling those vibes at, was in the chorus. And oh my God, the fucking bridge into the outro. As soon as I heard that piano at the very end, I was like, baby, oh yeah, that's it right there. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it. We haven't talked about the 5th track. That right there really sealed the deal. And I was like, this is my favorite track on the fucking album right here. That bridge into that outro, into that piano. I was like, And honestly, I feel like The Wake is in the wrong part of the album, because it took me a while to get into Inside Out because of this song. It goes to such that melodic end into a straight punk track with Inside Out. And I'm like, it made it hard. It made it really hard for me to swallow that change. So I feel like if they would have either ended the album with The Wake or put The Wake before Dance on My Grave. And I think the reason I would say put it before Dance on My Grave is just thematically, it feels like it fits there. You have The Wake, you have the wake of your funeral, and then, you know, Dance on My Grave. Really what The Wake is about is it's kind of about like who you are as a person. You're kind of asleep. Like, you're so deep down in depression, you're just not you. You're essentially kind of dead. So there's kind of a double entendre there with that. Like, you're at your wake, you're at your funeral because you're just not you. You're kind of dead right now. And the chorus is, wake me, I feel I've fallen asleep. Right? So who you are, you've fallen asleep. You're gone right now. You need to be woken up. And it kind of carries on from that then. Hate me for who I happen to be. I think is what it is. For who I have come to be. That's what it is. So it's kind of like you dead, you become this, people hate this, they want you back, they need you to wake up. So it's definitely a double entendre I took as for that song, and I absolutely fucking love it. Who doesn't have one of those days where you're just not you, you're just not yourself? That to me is what I took away from that song. And again, I feel like that just feels like that should fit right before Dance on My Grave. Maybe I really feel like that could have ended the album, but it definitely fits well before Dance on My Grave. And I'm curious to kind of take the album and just move it down there and listen to it like that. I feel like that would be really good. So then my other and last top 5 track is Plastic. I landed on this one because once I got around to Inside Out, I liked it. I liked the way. Fed Up is really good. I love the fucking bridge on that. I love the fact that you get Monoxide and Madrox going in and they're more or less rapping, and then it builds to this really atmospheric. Again, Fear Factory vibes. They have a lot of that kind of shit, especially in their first tracks. Like, if you go listen to Genexus, you get that kind of shit. You go listen to The Industrialist, you get that kind of shit in the very first track. Very atmospheric sounding music. And that's what they had in Fed Up. So that one was very close to being in my top 5. I ended up landing with Plastic because, again, Fear Factory vibes. The song Plastic is talking about being one of the last of the humans in a world of plastic. And one of the kind of driven in the ground hidden philosophies in Fear Factory's music, the whole name itself, Fear Factory, is man against machine. With the machine oftentimes being society or religion or government. Like, the factory itself is not, the machine itself is not always directly computers, AI, things like that. A lot of times it's society and just trying to survive as you yourself and not become a clone in a world of fucking, machines. So Plastic very much hit on that same nerve for me, where it's like kind of hard to fit in when you stand out, I'm like, ooh yeah, itch that spot right there, man. It hit a lot of those same Fear Factory vibes for me and really itched in those same spots that Fear Factory did. So I had to put Plastic in my top 5 because I'm like, yo, this just fits so goddamn well. So yeah, like I said, not going to play you guys any of the snippets because I don't feel like I can give you guys a proper portion of the songs to make you be like, okay, I'll go check this out. A lot of times I do that so that you guys can hear it and maybe it'll intrigue you, but I don't think I can properly do that with this album just because the way that the songs are really structured, they shift. There's bridges, there's interludes and things like that. There's different ways that these songs shift. And there's some of the tracks that start off one way and they end another. So like, you've just got to go listen to it. Again, if you enjoy metal music, if you enjoy rock music, then I think it's something that you could enjoy if you give it an open-minded chance. And if not, then I understand that as well. Not everybody likes everything that's put out by an artist. But yeah, I absolutely love Welcome to Your Funeral. This thing is easily skyrocketing into one of my favorite Twiztid albums. I think they did a very good job. And honestly, going forward from this, I would like to see them kind of lean into that sound a little bit more. Like, what they did with this was almost perfect. I would like to hear maybe more rapping. And one point that I had made to Fear the Effin' Beard, shout out to him, I would really love to hear them lean more into maybe a Linkin Park style album. And what I mean by that is have Madrox play more of a singer role, have him do more of the hooks, have him do more of the melodic singing, and let Monoxide come in and do rapping. So when I say that about Linkin Park, I'm talking when Mike Shinoda does a lot of the raps, he does sing at times. And then Chester would do the, like, just straight up screaming or fucking yelling. Let Madrox have Chester's role. Let Monoxide do more of a Mike Shinoda role. Do a dynamic like that where we have Monoxide not screaming, but maybe he's rapping more. Maybe he's doing some softer singing, and let Madrox do the singing and the fucking screaming. I would be curious to hear an album like that, assuming that they're going to continue down this route and give us another rock album in the future. It's something I would love to see them lean into a little bit more, but who knows? Maybe now that they've gone this direction with doing more of a new metal sound, they want to go more soft rock for the next one. And I would be okay with that too. That would actually be something curious to hear as well for me. But absolutely loved Welcome to Your Funeral. Again, it's quickly becoming a favorite album of Twiztid's. It's only been out a week, and I find myself wanting to go back to it a lot. It really kind of stunted Madrox's new albums for me because I was listening to the shit out of those. And I just was like, yo, I gotta go listen to the new fucking album again. It's just so good to me. If you didn't like it, I understand not everybody is going to enjoy that sound. But if you did like it, tell me down below what were your favorite tracks. What were some of your favorite parts of the album that you really loved. I thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time.